Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. I don't have a lot of EVE Online news when it comes to development of the game this week, but the CSM voting is happening right now. You can still vote for the rest of the weekend, so if you want to cast your vote to determine who will become a part of the CSM next year, then definitely go to the EVE Online website to do so. Look for the articles, and I think there you will find one that announces the starting of the voting. In that article you will find a link to a page where you can actually log in and cast your votes. I personally think that the importance and the influence that the CSM can have on the development of the game is a little bit overestimated. I see this as basically a tool for early feedback for CCP, where the main job, I think, for the CSM is mostly to talk to CCP about the ideas and systems that they want to implement and that they plan for the game, and to mostly find out and provide CCP with potential balance problems, potential exploit problems, and then of course the big one, potential very bad ideas that the player base would never accept. Stuff like pay to win, for instance, is something that I think the CSM is there to stop, basically. Pay to win, I personally don't think that CCP is going to go that route, but well, with the purchase of Pearl Abyss, the developers of Black Desert Online, I think it's understandable that some people are a bit worried about that, and I think that's why the CSM is actually very important for EVE Online. It is a rather unique aspect to any game, giving the players a voice through a sort of a council that is voted in democratically. It is very, very unique, and as I've said, I don't think that we should overestimate their potential influence on the development of the game, but for the health of the game and for stopping and finding major problems when it comes to the plans that CCP has, they do serve a very important and a vital function. Yeah, as you can tell, I think I'm not too worried about the composition of the CSM, if it's all nullsec players. Honestly, I don't think that it matters that much. If you are worried about that, definitely head over to the website and cast your votes. Next up, we'll take a quick look at the new Eden store, where a couple of new skins have showed up. Thorax police skin, Brudix police skin, Brudix Navy issue police skin. These look, in my opinion, absolutely amazing, and the price for these is 110 plex. Not bad. That's actually like less than half from the In Rust We Trust skin. So these feel super affordable, and for the quality, you could say, of them, absolutely an amazing deal in my opinion. And then there's a couple more that I spotted down here actually. The Ninazu police skin and the Erebus police skin. I think those will be popular because they look amazing, but we are talking about a capital and a super capital, so the price here is up to 390 plex. Still, look at that Erebus skin. I think pilots that do own one of these will want to pimp their Erebus out with a police skin. Absolutely amazing looking stuff in my opinion. Definitely my favorite one to put on the Ishtar as well. Next up, we are going to move on to the market. That's of course why everyone is here, and we're going to get started with plex and stuff at 345. See if I can put that down right. There we go. And yeah, let's get started. Here is the plex market in Jita, selling for 4.2 million or a bit above that. Buyers are coming in at 4 million or just above that. So slightly okay margin, around 5% or so. If we go to the player owned trade hubs, we see that we go down to 4.1 million for the sellers and less than 4.1 million. So just above 4 million for the buyers as well. So we go up a little bit, yeah, here in price. Now what is interesting is this here, 4 jumps out. It looks like someone is trying to set up another player owned trade ups, 4 jumps out of Jita in Obanen, and focusing on the plex market here, because lots of sellers are coming in at a 0.1% tax rated structure for the players. There's a bit of buying still happening in perimeter. We'll have to see how successful they are in actually trying to take over the market, but that's definitely something that's happening as well, some competition for perimeter basically. Let's take a quick look at the chart of plex as well. We can see that we are now well away from the peak that was close to 4.5 5 million ISK, but we can also tell that the market is hesitating to break through 4 million ISK, so we're flat in the last couple of days. My personal expectation is, looking at June, July, August that's coming up, that we will see a bit of a decline in general activity in the game itself, and as a result I think that will put more pressure on Plex prices. My thinking here is that people that are most likely to take a break are those that that want to try to Plex their accounts, that that have a lot of demand for Plex, and on the other hand, the most passionate players that will go through the entire summer tend to be the ones I think that will inject Plex into the market. I think those forces will have to play out. Of course, this is all speculation on my part, but that is my plan here, is to keep a close eye on this and look for Plex to actually break through the 4 million ISK. That's when we can decide on perhaps investing a little bit in the Plex market again. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate, and a chart that might just be a bit of an indication that this may be correct. Look at that, pretty sharp decline here in the 5-day moving average as well, even accelerating at the tail end. And very importantly, I think the first sellers are coming in now for less than 2 billion ISK for the multiple pilot training certificates. Buyers, we have one buyer at just below 1.9 billion, but most of them, this is also pretty important, are going for 1.8 billion ISK. That opens up quite a serious margin between buyers and sellers very quickly, and you can see that the decline to 1.7 and 1.6 is pretty quick in just a couple of sell orders. What must be noted is when the prices were 1 billion to 1.25 billion, these were the volumes, quite a lot of trading, and basically these high prices have completely gutted the multiple pilot train certificate market. As a result, just some volumes can very quickly move the needle, and so we see more volatility in what's happening for the price, but I think that the pressure on the price is pretty obvious at this point, especially here on the chart, and I think it will start to show up for Plex itself as well at some point. Next up, the skill extractors, same chart as the Plex market, of course, because these are really strongly correlated. You can basically do a one-on-one conversion of these. Same thing here, a bit of hesitation in the last couple of days, but we're well away from the peak at 500 million ISK. They're now selling for 459 million ISK, buyers coming in at 454. That's definitely less margin than in the Plex market between sellers and buyers, very close together. And so this one is telling us the exact opposite of the multiple pilot train certificates. If the buyers are still this high, it is less likely for the prices to actually decline. Because, well, buyers are still willing to buy very close to the sell price at this moment. On the other hand, I personally think that when it comes to the relation between skill extractors and Plex, it's Plex that are leading, and so once Plex declines, that's, I think, when skill extractors will invariably follow suit as a consequence of that. We still have a look at the injectors to do. So here are the large scale injectors, flat at 1 billion ISK, very surprising, very strong plateau at the 1-year high point for large scale injectors, 1 billion for the sellers and 984 million for the buyers. It's an okay margin, but I think that basically what we need to see if we want to decline in the large scale injector prices is this margin to open up even more, and that's just not happening right now. Still very strong demand for skill points apparently in the game. Small scale injectors, let's take a look at that one, have also declined from a peak, a bit more pronounced here at 210 million, and we are now basically landing on 200 million ISK, 202 for the sellers, 197 for the buyers. Again, very narrow margin between these two, only 5 million ISK on a 200 million ISK item. That is absolutely nothing. And so these two, the injectors, are indicating still very strong demand for skill points, but potentially also a very stable Plex related market. So there is a mixed and we're seeing mixed signals here basically when it comes to my expectation for Plex. I personally still think that summer activity is going to be the determining factor in the medium term for July, August, those months. For the daily alpha injectors next, we actually have a bit of a bump from 60 million ISK, bringing us back to a slightly above average price at 66.5 million for the sellers and 61.6 million for the buyers. A little bit more expensive than normal. Could this be considered regular inflation? perhaps, but I personally do think that we're still a little bit above average, and again primed for a bit of a decline again as well. We can see the massive impact on the CCP sale that can happen for these, and these are quite notorious opportunities, of course, in something like the daily alpha injector, as we can see here. Next up, let's move on to the minerals at 1010. Like that, and if you kept an eye on the ticker, you know that titanium has done quite well here. We are talking for the sellers of almost 5.5 ISK, and the buyers are up to 5.3 ISK as well, so they are being forced up by, well, less supply or more demand. And we can see we had a nice bump up, and we are slowly still edging up, trying to get to 5.5 ISK for titanium, which is very good news, of course. Finally getting a little bit more of a return for people that are mining, especially in HiSec. So this is a nice little comeback, and the surprise is of course that after going from 4.5 to almost 5.5 ISK in a rather short amount of time, the market is actually sustaining that price for now. You usually see massive dumping, increased volumes, and then a decrease in price. So I think that it shows that this increase in price is mostly supported by increased demand, probably due to the deployment of the Imperium, of course, which will have drastically lowered the supply of titanium in the game in general. Next up, we've got pyrite, same bump up to, let's see here, 4.8 ISK. Here we do see a little bit of a decline, although the volumes are still quite respectable, and we are staying at 4.5 ISK for the sellers, 4.35 ISK for the buyers. It's pretty much the same price as titanium. You do see a couple of billion units coming in here, but still, considering that we went as low as 3 ISK in December, this is a very nice little comeback, and, well, considering this 1-year chart, actually a well above average price, very close to the 1-year high point, which actually was reached here in June when we went to that 4.8 ISK. So pretty nice as well for pyrite, actually, although historically speaking this is still a terrible price. But of course we can't stay stuck in the past here. It's the reality of Rorcal mining. Oversupply, especially in pyrite and isogen, are a complete reality, so we should be thankful for any bit of comeback here. After that, we've got Mexlon that also went back to an average price for the year of around 65 ISK, which even historically speaking is actually a respectable price for Mexlon. 64.4 for the sellers, 62.4 for the buyers. So buyers forced up as well, and apparently able to maintain that current price as well. Main reason why Mexlon is different is because it is still the bottleneck when it comes to local mining in 0.0. After that, we get isogen, in my opinion the one that has suffered the most, went as low as 15 ISK. We even broke that on a couple of occasions, and here you do have a big volume spike, but the impact on the price is too small. 16.21 for the sellers, 15.70 for the buyers. That is still bottom of the barrel, the least performing HiSec mineral, former HiSec mineral we should say, at this point, and very depressing of course for isogen. But it's basically been so overmined, so oversupplied for so long that there is a lot of inertia in this market, massive volumes still available and being created. It's just the oversupplied mineral when it comes to the good old ABC, no, not ABCs, but HiSec minerals, you could say. And so it has a lot of stability in the price, unfortunately at a super low price. After that, we've got Noxium, the one that has actually performed quite well over the last year or so, been able to maintain a price of around 300 ISK for most of that, and look at that, now going up to 325 and apparently staying there for the last week or so. Not bad either. In fact, sellers are up to 338 ISK, which is, well, considering this 1-year chart, I think very close to the peak. We get one peak at 350, but that's really it. And then 308 for the buyers. Fortunately, buyers very hesitant to go even higher for Noxium here, but very good performance in the last year actually for Noxium, and currently trading above average as well. After that, we get the former Nasdaq ones. Here is Zydrine, able to defend the 500 ISK mark. A bit of a spike here as well, but right back on 500 ISK. So 520 for the sellers and 505 for the buyers. That's basically the story in the last couple of months for Zydrine. Actually stable and able to maintain that 500 ISK price range. Different story for Megasite though, under pressure in the last couple of months as well, breaking through 450 and only now starting to, I think, stabilize a little bit. 448 for the sellers, 412, 413 for the buyers. And another reverse situation, Megasite used to always be more expensive than Zydrine, and now it's actually cheaper than Zydrine. And for the final one, we still have Morphite that we saw in the last couple of weeks that jumped up to 9,000 ISK and is able to maintain itself there as well. 9,000 for the sellers, 8,900 for the buyers. So here your bottom opportunity was in May, and unfortunately that one is over at this point. I'm not sure what you should do at this price range. If you still have some really cheap Morphite lying around, I would personally sell it right now and then wait for another sell opportunity. Buy opportunity, which I think might be coming, because I'm seeing the sort of rumblings on Reddit that the ward deployment might be short-lived when it comes to what the Imperium is doing. We'll have to wait and see, of course. And my nose is itching a little bit. All right, time to move on to PI next. That's going to be at 1550. And let's take a look at these. Here are the broadcast nodes after, for the third time, I think in a couple of months, reaching that 1.9 million bottom. We now have a volume spike, so probably investments, and we are back to more than 2 million ISK, I think. Yep, 2.1 million for the sellers, still less than 1.9 million for the buyers. So it's basically been a massive binge of purchasing, people getting ready for potentially, of course, an announcement from CCP. Now, here that is one aspect of the CSM that is often a bit of a dangerous area. Is there actual insider trading that's happening with the CSM? Stuff like that, quite often stuff like this, right? A massive volume increase all of a sudden makes people wonder, but honestly this one comes at a very logical time when the average price went as low as 1.9 million. Bottom price, 1 year low price. It's normal for investors to spot that and to actually start to purchase, which will then drive the price up towards their peak of what they're willing to do here. Apparently 2,085,000 or something like that will probably have been the top where they were willing to buy. Everything below that. So this is a bit of a gamble. This is probably someone taking a pretty massive position in broadcast nodes, expecting CCP to come out with an announcement on structures at some point. Next up here we've got construction blocks that are at around 11,000 ISK, but I think that let's see here, those daily points that are all over the place shows a pretty big margin. So let's see if that's right. 10,800 is for the sellers, 10,000 is for the buyers. Respectable margin. 10,800, a touch below the 11k average, I would say. Still an okay price, but not a great one. Next up, we've got the consumer electronics, able to hold on to 14,000 ISK. That is not bad. 14,400 for the sellers, 13,800 for the buyers here. That's 600 ISK margin, bit less than construction blocks, but it is still there. And that's a bit of a difference. Both of these have known that nice little comeback towards an average price or slightly above that. Then a massively sharp drop off to bottom price in May, and a bit of a comeback, but construction blocks are not able to go back to their average or above that, whereas consumer electronics have done so and are actually going for a very good price. So yeah, the PI market, while we often try to look for trends and try to look for correlations, it is definitely its unique thing in every single product as well. Although there are, of course, things that move in tandem, such as fuel-related PI materials quite often. Here is coolants, for instance, went to a nice peak in March, up to 16,000 ISK. That's actually a really great price, no matter what. But that was short. That was not able to be maintained, of course, and we are now back to an okay price. I would say 11,000 ISK for the sellers, 10,600 for the buyer. First buyer, most are just above 10,000 ISK here. This is historically speaking a normal price for coolants as well. After that, we've got enriched uranium, same March peak. So here is that that correlation that I'm talking about, because enriched uranium is also tied to fuels. This one is actually able to maintain a better price right now, to 14,000 almost for the sellers, 13,200 for one buyer. Most of them actually 11,325. That's actually something that we should note. Pretty big margin here, couple thousand ISK plus in margin actually shows the potential for something like this to happen. A massive drop off to a low price, and then a bit of a recovery, of course, as people are not willing to keep dumping on these lower prices. And so here right now enriched uranium is doing okay, yeah, also a bit of a contrast on the point now between coolants and enriched uranium, but you can also see the conversions points as well. Next up, we've got the integrity response zones. Bit of the same pattern, went as low as 2.25 million, obviously well below average price. And then here we get some increased volumes, driving the price back up to 2.5 million, almost 2.6 for the sellers, 2.4 million for the buyers. So here again, I think some investments, some position taking has been done. We've got mechanical parts next, fuel related, bit of a different story, although we also see that March peak here. We're actually doing quite well at the moment as well. Sellers coming in at 12,400 ISK, buyers at 11,500 ISK, so trading a decent chunk above average. After that, we get nuclear reactors. This used to be one that had lots of very nice volatility. Unfortunately, you can see that interest has dropped off quite sharply. And we can see here at the tail end that we are at bottom prices right now due to a complete lack of demand. 71,000 for the buyers. Nobody's buying nuclear reactors. Sellers are as low as 85,000 or 86,000 almost, I should say. This, in my opinion, if you look at 71,000 and let's try to get 75,000 on the chart, is a massive buy opportunity for nuclear reactors. But if you look at these volumes, if you look at these price ranges with a constant, then a high point and a low point, high point, low point, all over the place. This shows that that massive margin has basically always existed, and that from time to time sellers dry up as well, driving the price up a little bit, but buyers have stayed super low in the last year or so. So this is not a Twitch trade to be made. This is not something that I'm gonna buy at 75k, which someone is trying to do, 6 jumps out for instance, and then I'm gonna immediately turn this into a profit. That's gonna be very, very difficult to do. But for the longer term, right now you're buying so much below the chart that I think it is exactly the right time to do so. Stock up on some super cheap nuclear reactors and then let those, hold on to those and wait for that market to actually come back. Next up, organic mortar applicators. Again, volume increase and then bringing the price back to an average, maybe even above average price. Very interesting. 1.2 million for the sellers, 1.1 million for the buyers. Definitely above average on the seller side of things. And again, on volume, so I think people are taking position for organic mortar applicators. I'm not sure, perhaps there has been some sort of announcement that I missed somewhere. CCP is on the road these days, of course, going to a lot of major cities in the world right now. And perhaps here and there they might drop some tips as to what's going to come next. There was also this one article somewhere where Upwell announced a new line of like small arms or something like that, but I think that the discussion is this like in-game lore and maybe more like a Nova reference where they're talking about arms for personal individuals, like guns for an FPS or something like that, or are they talking about deployable weapons such as what we have in the old POS system? And then I did see some people comment that if they want full parity with the old POS system, then some sort of automated defenses actually might make sense as well, which then of course would make sense to look into some advanced PI materials as an investment as well. So we'll have to wait and see. All of this is of course a lot of speculation, but we can clearly see now in the last week or so that some people have made pretty big investments in these advanced PI materials. Next up, we've got robotics, a specialized PI material tied to fuels, and this one is actually pretty high right now. Let's take a look at the sellers. 108,000 ISK, buyers coming in at 103, definitely above average. One thing to note though, this robotics chart looks like it's at like really a peak. It is from 95,000 to 110,000 most of the time, so this is actually not a lot of movement that we're seeing here. Next up, self-harmonizing power cores. Not that much of a volume that we're seeing here, but again as well, same pattern. Went very close to 1.9 million ISK and is now up to 2.2 million for the sellers, 1.9 million still for the buyers. But yeah, someone came in and did clean up a little bit on the seller side of things. Superconductors next, back to a, well, average price, I would say 12k, 12,800 for the sellers, definitely a good price. 11,600, maybe a touch below average there, but superconductors has some really good periods of around 13k, and the sellers are still at 12,800, so still a great and pretty stable product actually with a reasonable sell price. Test cultures, that's a bit different. We're definitely still below average by quite a bit. sellers 7,000 disc, and below that buyers 6,500 disc. Another one of those that might be interesting. I personally feel it's not as pronounced as the nuclear reactors here, because we've been here for a couple of months, so we do see some volumes from time to time. Some people are taking their positions, but this feels a bit more risky because we've been this low for a long time. And then finally we have the wetware mainframes. That's actually not jumping up too much, although we haven't seen that bottom price for a couple of weeks at this point. We went as low as 2 million here. When was that? 25th of May, and so now we are at 2.2 million for the sellers, a bit above 2 million for the buyers, and we went as low as 2 million. Yeah, that's basically back in line. 2.2 million, slightly below average, but it's not as pronounced as, let's say, the broadcast nodes with that volume spike and that increase, and then especially the double jump that we saw in, where was it? I think, no, it's not the, obviously it's not the nuclear reactors, it's the organic mortar applicators. That is quite significant. I think that there is at least one player that is making his investments in PI. Next up, advanced moon materials, coming in at 2540. Let's take a look at those. Unfortunately, still a very stable situation in nullsec. As a result here, crystalline carbonite still basically well below average, flat at bottom prices. So we're gonna go over these ones pretty quickly and maybe look for some outliers. We get ferrite carbide that tried to break out a little bit, or to break away from these bottom price of around 125 for a bit, went up to 140. Sellers are down to 136 already, buyers 121. So average prices are right back at these bottom 125-ish prices at the moment. Next up we have the titanium carbide that had a nice spike, so some volatility does happen. I think it's going to be region locked depending on what region in nullsec. Whoops, excuse me, I did just tap the microphone there. So if a region is being burned down or something like that, it will have an impact on some of these individual moon materials. And here titanium carbide went from 175 up to a peak of 288. That's not bad. Of course, something like that does not last forever. People do have stocks at the ready, and so we get some more volumes coming in, but we are still at, let's take a look at that, 228 for the sellers and 209 for the buyers, compared to the 175 to even 150 bottom prices. That is still definitely above average. Then we've got the tungsten carbide that is continuing to stay clear of the very bottom prices, but is definitely still trading very low at 200 disc for the sellers and 182 for the buyers. Next up, the metamaterials. Let's see if there's anything special here. I wouldn't call this special. Photonic metamaterials went to less than 15,000 disc, a bit of volume purchasing, but the increase in price is very, very shy. 16,250 for the sellers, 15,600 for the buyers. That is not gonna make a big difference. Oh, let me quickly write something down here. Next up, we've got plasmonic metamaterials. I'm assuming Minmator, let's see, no, actually not tied to titanium carbide, so that's a bit of a surprise that this one actually went up to 25,000 disc as well. A bit above average for sure for the year. Bit of a downtrend here at the tail end, but still very respectable. 23,000 for the sellers, 22,000 for the buyers. So this is another one of those that actually moved up, counter to most of the other advanced moon materials at the moment. Then we have non-linear metamaterials, which I would tie to Caldari, right? To the titanium carbide spike, but it's already over basically. We did go up to 29, almost 30,000 disc. We're already back down to 26,000 for the sellers, 25,000 for the buyers, back to an average price basically for the non-linear metamaterials. And then here we've got terahertz metamaterials that is flat on its average price as well. So a very mixed picture this week when it comes to the carbides and when it comes to the metamaterials, with some bottom prices, some breakouts, and then quite a few that are actually settling towards an average price. Well, the null-sec situation is not that easy at the moment. My personal feeling, which is also something that I have seen in a thread on Reddit about another PvP group that is disbanding, is that CCP might need to shake things up a little bit. We also perhaps remember the AMA, the questions or something like that, or the article with CCP Hilmar, where he talked about, well, perhaps they do have to at some point kick over some of the anthills that have been built up there, and I think that it's better to make some mistakes along the way than to keep things completely stale and blocked. So we'll see, we will see. I do agree that CCP might need to do something when it comes to the inertia that exists in null-sec at the moment, and the structure spam is also definitely a problem. I personally do think that it's starting to look like they may need to do something about the absolute defensibility and spammability of the structures as well, if they want a more dynamic situation in null-sec. We'll see, we will see. Perhaps the Triglavians are CCP's answer to that. Of course, they're still in phase 1 for their invasions. Who knows what those guys are up to. We still have a couple of advanced move materials to take a look at. Here are the fermionic condensates that are still above average here, staying above 100,000 disk for the sellers, slightly below that for the buyers. A super narrow margin, and definitely a small trade that could have been made here in course of just 1 month. Next up, we've got Ferrogel that also jumped up from around 45,000 discs, now selling for 50,000 discs. So not a great trade to be made, but basically back to an average price or slightly above average price. Then we get the Fullerites that are trying to climb away from that bottom price, went to less than 900 disc and is now going for 1,000 disc, but the pressure does obviously still exist for Fullerites. This one is not breaking out. After that, we get the hypersynaptic fibers that did go up to 14,000 disc, 1 year chart, probably an average. Unfortunately, a rather short-lived increase in price. Sellers are already back down to 13,500 for the first one, and it's the buyers that are not budging. They're staying below 12,000 disc at this point. Then we've got the nano transistors that are doing okay, back to an average price of more than 5,000 disc. That's not so bad, and it's basically a bit of a lack of sellers. That's quite interesting. So we don't see, let's see if it's, nope, not in player owned trade upsiders. So we're seeing a bit of a lack of supply in nano transistors that have put their price back to an average range. After that, we've got the phenolic composites. These guys have played with really low bottoms of 1600 a couple of times. So here we basically moved away from that, but it is still 2000 ISK for the sellers and 1940 ISK for the buyers. That is actually still pretty damn cheap if you look at this 1 year chart. And then we've got these ceramic fibers that, well, had a bottom in May. Let's see how low they went, 390, and are now selling for 521. So that is not so bad. Buyers are up to almost 500 ISK as well. And so here we have a small trade that was possible as well in the course of a month. So the advanced move materials, still a pretty difficult segment because I don't live in null-sec myself and I'm not always up to speed with everything that's happening there, especially with the bigger groups and the potential supply lines of these goods. But we are seeing some activity there as well, with a couple of nice breakouts here and there that were definitely trade-worthy as well. After that, let's take a look at the impact on the Tech2 ship market at 32.45. Like that. Let's take a look at the Aries here that did jump up on big volumes on some null-sec action, of course. Fortunately, things look like they're quieting down, and so we're heading back for 30 million ISK for almost 31 for the sellers, 28 million for the buyers. So we're back on the average price right now. And I think here now the wait and see approach is the best one. Of course, this was a pretty damn nice trade, 23.8 for the buyers, and then all of a sudden you can try to sell them for 36 million. That is why we love the Tech2 ship market, of course. The Basilisk also went up in price quite substantially after going for less than 230. And here we can see again stability coming back, so volumes coming back, purchasing decreasing, and as a result we are back to a more average price for the Basilisk. 263 still for the sellers, that's actually pretty high. 252 for the buyers. We basically have the margin between the two opening up here. After that, we get the Cerberus, a ship that has moved surprisingly little on nullsec deployment, in my opinion. Actually went down here to 220 million ISK, is only now coming back to a more average price, 273 for the sellers, 253 for the buyers of the Cerberus. A small trade, but not that great in my opinion. Still, another one that is basically back on an average price for the year here in the Tech 2 ship market. Very interesting to basically see that, in my opinion, supply has dropped down a little bit in the Cerberus. Let's see in the last 24 hours. Still a full front page. That's a bit of a surprise to me. Volume-wise, nothing that special to increase this price back. So, yeah, kind of a strange one where, I mean, the Ares, you can understand that after the peak, same with the Basilisk, after some nullsec action and purchasing. And here you can clearly see the volumes decrease and the price go back to average. But the Cerberus, yep, nothing too special, and yet also that increase in price is here. After that, we've got the Crow that's only now breaking out. Very interesting. Could have bought these for 25 million about a month ago, now selling for 37 million. And this again is why we love the Tech 2 market. These are the quicker trades that we can make, and potentially that can be quite a bit of risk. So if you happen to have a couple of low bought crows, this is definitely a great time to try to sell them. Good to see a sell opportunity when the first three here are showing signs of everything going back to their average price. Same here with the Guardian, of course, went to 200 million up to 280, and then now we are normalizing on decreasing volumes yet again. 230 for the sellers, yeah, and 217 for the buyers. So these are basically meeting around this average point for the year. Heretic next, very flat at 70 million ISK. Interdictors have moved surprisingly little despite stuff happening in nullsec. So here, not much to say. 71 million for the sellers, 63 million still for the buyers, which is still pretty damn cheap. But unfortunately, these did not move together with some of the stealth bombers, for instance, and the logistics ships, which I personally would have expected them to do. After that, we've got the Hound. Also, you can see here, went down to 27 million, peak here to almost 40 million. I actually sold my Hounds at 37 million after, let's see if I can do the trades made here. Hound bought for 25.2, sold for 37 million. So I took advantage of this spike, and now, of course, again, decreasing volumes. Prices heading back for a more average 33 million for the sellers, 30 million for the buyers. So this is definitely now the in-between period where we'll have to wait and see what the market decides to do next. The Ishtar, completely different story, playing with 1 year low points at this point. Less than 200 million for the sellers, 188 for the buyers. So here we see lots of normalization, but we also see a buy opportunity for the Ishtar, and then here a sell opportunity for the Crow. So the Tech 2 market is definitely alive right now. Next up, we've got the Manticore. Same thing here on nullsec, buying for 29 million, top selling at 40 million. Pretty good trade to be made here. Now we're down to 35 million for the sellers and 29 million for the buyers. So we're very quickly again landing back on that average. On again, look at the volumes here, obviously decreasing and normalizing again. Did I make a Manticore trade? Yep, bought for 27.9 million, sold for 33.9 million. So sold a little bit early, but this is another increase in price that I personally took advantage of to make a little bit of risk. After that, we get the Munin. This one was added to the Tech 2 market because it was for a while at least a doctrine in the Imperium. I'm personally just not seeing it right now for the Munin, for this heavy assault cruiser, a bit like the Ishtar actually, and a bit like the Cerberus. These guys are not moving that much, so it looks like the hacks are not in the meta right now. 242 million for the sellers, 222 for the buyers. Not much to say, it's definitely below average. After that, we've got the Nemesis. Not a great spike, but we went down to 25 million and up to 32.5 million. And then again, volumes decreasing, price normalizing, selling now for 29 million. Buyers coming in at 27 million with 142. That's going to be here for a little bit. And yeah, also again, that back on its average trend that we're seeing. Oneros went to a bottom price as well and basically only managed to normalize. That is of course because of its super small volumes. 206 for the sellers, 190 for the buyers. Then we get the Purifier that has That's what we like to see. 1, 2, 3, 4 lovely spikes, and then the bottoms go down to almost 25 million on a couple of times. Definitely a very clear opportunities below 30 million become very pronounced, and then spikes up to more than 40 million are more than welcome. And here 28.3 to 43.8, that is a lovely trade to make. Now of course, again, volumes dropped off a cliff after this, and we're back to a more normal range. 35 million for the sellers, 33 million for the buyers. I don't think I made a purifier trade. Basically never had the balls to do another purchase here, but yeah, this is of course the Tech 2 market that we are looking for. Love that volatility. This is where lots of risk is made and lost, unfortunately, as well. It's always a bit of a risk, but that's opportunity, of course, and that does feel great when you manage to make a couple of these trades. Sabers, again, interdictors, I thought they'd be great. They are disappointing a little bit, so still on a well below average price range right now. 67 for the sellers, 63 for the buyers. Not much to say there. Then we get the Scimitar, also, you know, for a logistics cruiser, definitely I think one of the most popular ones when it comes to shield reps. Not doing that great, lacking a bit of volatility, basically slowly working its way back to an average price. 221 for the sellers, 207 for the buyers. And then finally we get a Stiletto that spiked up last week and now really breaks out to a 1-year high point. We're talking 40 million is for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers. So if you manage to buy here in May for 26 million ISK, and that's not that long ago, and that was actually a pronounced 1-year low point. I myself was a bit too lazy, didn't come here to actually grab some stilettos, but 26 million like 1.5 months ago, now selling for 40 million ISK. That is why we love the Tech 2 market. So we got some buy opportunities in the hacks. Unfortunately, despite the actions in Nullsec, these are not doing too great, but the Ishtar looks very, very promising, of course. And then we actually still have a Crow, which is an interceptor that's breaking out right now, and the Stiletto as well. Very, very interesting situation. And of course, I think that, well, the potential, especially here in the Purifier, in the stealth bombers, and then in the logistics cruisers, does definitely exist as well. Very cool in my opinion. Next up, we have the Tech 3 market coming in at 41 minutes. And let's take a look at that one. I was seeing signs of more supply coming in, so let's see what's happening here. The Confessor is stabilizing at 37.5 million on the chart, 38 for the sellers, 35 for the buyers. And we can see that supplies, well, it's still a bit more, just like last week, but it's nothing too dramatic. So I'd say that that's good news for people that are looking for a stable and decent margins when it comes to production of the Tech 3 destroyers. At least here is the Hekit managing to maintain a price of above 45 million ISK, 46 million for the sellers, 43 million for the buyers. And here, of course, in the last 24 hours, you have almost this full front page, 48 here, 35 here. You do have, well, that's actually okay. We don't have to browse too long, so this is actually surprisingly low. I would even say for the Hekit that's selling for 46 million ISK. After that, we get the Jackdaw, obviously Nullsec related spike up to 55 million ISK. We're back down a little bit, still 50 million for the sellers, 40 million for the buyers. And so here supply actually not too crazy, also a bit more than, let's say, a couple of months ago, but nothing that the market can't handle. And then finally we've got this Vapel as well that spiked up a little bit and is now back down to less than 40 million. Is 40 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers. We get 42, 27, 22 and 17 here, but last 24 hours it's not that much, and so the focus is definitely switching to like the Jackdaw and the Hekit that are selling at a massive premium. I was a bit worried last week. It really looked like supplies in general were climbing, but here now I think that it's actually quite okay, and that well, the market needs to find itself a little bit now with the Hekit selling well above all the others. Hekit and Jackdaw, I should say, selling well above all the others. Obviously, we're gonna see a little bit of an increase in supply here. We can even expect a couple hundred. It would not be strange, actually, considering 50 million for the Jackdaw right now. But as a response, we should also see a bit of a drying up happening in the Confessor and the Svepel, which should bring those prices back closer together. 40, a little bit above that, seems to be the average that they mostly go for. So I think we're still primed for a healthy market, and basically a little bit of Nullsec Nosik buying has, thrown it off a little bit, but I think we're just set to go back to being okay. After that, we've got the cruisers, though. That was a little bit different. These have, to my surprise, been for going for very, very low prices, like the Legion here. And now finally, we do see a bit of a move up in the Legion price, going back to more than 150 million. So 158 for the sellers, 146 for the buyers. And what you should note, though, is the very, very small volumes. We have to go down to 202 million to find a sell order of more than 10 units, more than 9 units. That is pretty damn crazy, actually, and is actually potentially very valuable if you could have bought here at these low prices. The volatility can be done on just a couple dozen ships, which makes it very, very interesting, of course, but also very risky. Because there just aren't that many ships and you don't really know what's going to happen here. So the Legion moved up a little bit, not too much, but it's really those super low volumes here that are, in my opinion, a little bit worrying. After that, we've got the Loki that is still hovering at 160 million ISK. Bottom prices right now, 164 for the sellers, 153 for the buyers, and that is, we've got 36, 23, 35. Other than that, this is all quite okay as well. Last 24 hours, we do have a full front page that is basically keeping the Loki at this really low price. But in general, this is not that many ships. And if someone would decide to, a Loki fleet, I still think it makes sense in nullsec. Correct me if I'm wrong here. But then you could buy everything below 165. That's not that much. That's maybe a big fleet. That's it. And then you're up to 180. So this is primed for volatility. But again, it does feel a little bit risky because now we have been at these bottom prices despite that situation for a couple of months already. After that, we've got the Proteus. And that's what I was talking about here. You go down to a bottom price of 130 and then we're back to 150. So it's not that remarkable. It's not that big of an increase in price, but it happens very, very quickly. 156 for the sellers, 146 for the buyers. And here again, the volumes, there just aren't that many Protea on the market. So you don't need to buy that many of them to bring the price up to a 170 range. Which is, definitely a strange situation to be in. The Tengu has not moved from last week, still at around 160, which is actually pretty cheap for a Tengu. And then availability here is a little bit higher. I still think for PvE, the Tengu might be the most popular Tech 3 cruiser because, of course, of its missile shield potential there. 150 for the buyers. But outside of this one, I am really seeing that completely different dynamic in the cruiser market from the destroyer market. The destroyer market, in my opinion, is healthy. A bit more supplied, but I think that that's normal also with the extra purchasing that's happening. A bit out of whack a little bit between Hecate, Jackdaw and Confessor's Vepel, but is primed to be quite okay and to normalize. The cruiser market, though, feels undersupplied, especially that combination of Loki here. Not a great availability. We're not seeing massive oversupply or anything like that, and still 1 year low prices here. So this is primed to do some strange stuff, in my opinion. I don't really know what to make of it, but this feels completely out of whack. Something very strange right here. We'll see what that brings in the future, of course. And then we will end with an extra product. I'm choosing something different now. We're going to take a look at the faction armor reps. That's going to be at 4720. This is just a bit of an interest because I did bring back some loot from my exploration activities, and I saw some really strange spikes. So let's take a look. If I go for hull and armor repairs, let's go for the large ones first, and then I'm mostly interested. So I'm gonna call it deadspace actually. Deadspace. Let's write that down like this. The reason I think that, look at that, Centis 8 large armor rep, normally 200 million, and here we've got spikes at 350 million sellers. There's no one here. There is no one here, and it's selling for 320 million. And I think that it is the Abyss that is doing this, that people are mostly gambling on these dead space repairers in order to try and create some really awesome ones. Here is a Centum B type. Look at that. Normally 100 million ISK. Now 150, 165 million even if you manage to grab the first one here. That is another really amazing spike. Next up we've got the C-type large. This is a bad chart, so not really showing too much, but slightly up I would say. And then we get an X-type, also 1 year high point right now. Average price you could say in the last year 150 million ISK, now selling for 284 million ISK. We still have a core A-type here, same little spike from 100 to 200 million ISK. I shouldn't call that little, that's almost a doubling in price, going for 260 million ISK availability. Crazy low. Look at the volumes here. Next up we've got a core B-type, same thing again. Core C-type, same thing again. 1 year high point, 50 million not that long ago, now selling for 140 million ISK. And then the X-type also going for a 1 year high point. Corpus A-type, not that pronounced. Corpus B-type, so these are probably not that available because you do have to take a look at the volumes here as well. But here Corpus X-type, look at that, normally 150 million ISK, now selling for 320 million ISK, more than double the price. That's the largest. Let's also take a quick look at the mediums, then we'll go for deadspace. This is stuff that I personally use quite a lot, you know, Gila, no not Gila, but Ishtar, Stradios. They can definitely use a medium faction rep to make sure that they can keep up with even the hardest sites. And here we've got a Centum A-type, not super pronounced, especially where we come from, but obviously also trading well above average for 440 million ISK. Then we've got a Centum B-type, also a bit of a spike up here, normally 200 million ISK, now 328 million. Availability is just gone. Then we've got a Centum C-type, also breaking out here, heading for 180, 181 million. Average price 130 million, so not that big a spike, but it's definitely there. Corellum C-type up as well to 400 million ISK. Availability, it's just not there. Then we get a B-type. Look at that, primed right here. Normally 150 million. A week ago 150 million ISK. It's gone. 300 million right now. What the hell is happening with these faction armor reps? It's kind of crazy. Again, Corellum C-type doing the same thing as well. Corpum A-type, just coming from a spike. That's just 435 million, went up to 600 million ISK on the chart. Crazy situation. Then we get a B-type here breaking out as well, and then a C-type that is going for, what is it right now? 200 million ISK on the seller side of things. We'll take a quick final look at the small ones as well. I think here this might move a bit less because this is far more available. Any 3 out of 10 will easily drop these, for instance. So the A-type here is definitely trading above average, but nothing too crazy. Then the Centi B-type is again also trading above average, but not as pronounced in its spiky behavior. And then the C-type is actually right on its average. Corelli A-type, yeah, bit above average again. B-type, nothing special. C-type, nothing special. And here, yeah, bit above average again. Not much to say, and not much to say. But yeah, medium reppers definitely dropping from the 4 out of 10 in Sancha, for instance, really great. And larges are also spiking quite highly. I personally, my expectation is that this is because of the Abyss, because of the what are they called? God damn it. Not exactly, I can't remember the name right now, but you can obviously gamble on the stats there. I think that that's happening a lot with these deadspace armor reps, and yeah, that is a great opportunity because right now, you know, you find one, you get an average price, you bring it to Jita, and you can try to sell it for double that price. Crazy good stuff. And so I'm making a lot of ISK with my exploration. Very happy to see that actually, and so I wanted to share that with you guys as well to show you this awesome opportunity. And that's gonna be it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.